Okay. So key challenges in effective implementation of IFRS 9. Very, very important slide because this gives to you a bit of an idea of where we are with respect to preparedness. And by the way, my focus is on the banks, but all the financial services entities or perhaps maybe the other non-financial services entities may be able to create some relevance with the preparedness that we have within the industry as a whole. So currently we are using a standardized approach. So as I mentioned to you earlier in my first slide, banks in the world have a good starting point because they were already compliant with advanced approaches for Basel II and also advanced credit risk management principles and techniques. In Pakistan, the starting point for us is standardized approach. In Pakistan, we had been using more of the expert judgment application behavioral scorecards. So there are institutions which might be using data-driven statistical scorecards, but may not necessarily have tested it for some time and may not necessarily be using those for business decisions. So it's a very, very important point. So whether we've got the base ready for IFRS 9 or not, this is the question that we need to ask ourselves. And there are banks that have developed some statistical models, behavioral statistical models, but whether or not those are validated, this also is a question. So a major transformation exercise may need to occur, which essentially would mean a forward-looking PD estimation, would mean modeling for loss given default and exposure at defaults, and would also mean some kind of estimations for maturities and for credit conversion factors and also for macroeconomic scenarios. So therefore, the credit policy also will need to be very clear with respect to overrides. As I mentioned to you earlier, the appetite has gotten impacted. The willingness has gotten impacted. So this will essentially lead to some changes in the risk acceptance criteria. So that would also have to get reflected within the credit policies of the banks. So the challenges that they face as of now is beyond the fact that the statistical models are not available and the forward-looking probability of default and GD or AD models are not there, is the fact that the systems rely on historical information. So we need to plug in the future information. We need to plug in the future sensitive, expert judgment techniques, and also we need to sort of recalibrate the models to allow for the stress test and also the back test. And one more important aspect is going to be the data quality issues within the existing legacy systems, or perhaps maybe in the way in which the data is getting stored within institutions. So essentially, if you would see right now, IFRS 9 is mostly based on a default estimation or an average default ratio estimation. So it generally is not the case. It should be based on a typical loan by loan probability of default estimation, resulting in an estimation of the expected credit loss, applying the LGD and AAD estimations as well. So therefore, the time will probably be reasonable in terms of preparing yourselves for IFRS 9 implementation. It may not necessarily be happening over time. So you would need to put in the required efforts, time, people, because I would like to point out two of the major, critical success factors in this, and two of the major dependencies. The first is the availability of skilled and experienced resources who know about modeling, who know about model validations, and to be able to hook those resources up with you. That's the first. And the second is the ability to exercise collective wisdom in terms of taking decisions as to the future economic scenarios to be incorporated, or perhaps the decisions with respect to the economic recovery scenarios, and also what kind of stress tests that you